Bead Company, and today I have the pleasure of doing a component necklace that was a design winner from our 2017 Design Challenge. And this necklace, which is component based, is by Anna Bawden, and it's a beautiful design that she called Firestorm. In her original design, she used some nice orange and lava colors. I'm going to be using more of the purple colors in the design here, the purple and blue. If you need any of the materials to do this 2017 winter Firestorm necklace, or any of the components which can be used as earrings or parts of bracelets, you can go below the video and there's a little date stamp that says when the video was produced. If you read through that and then click the show more button, there'll be links to all of these different products if you do want to purchase them from me online at potomacbeads.com. The Firestorm necklace consists of Potomac Bead Company disc duos, which if you haven't used them yet, they're a 2-hole disc, and I'll be using the Crystal Slipperit Matted Full Color, which has a nice purple and also a blue kind of tone to it. Highlighting that blue tone will be the Rose Montes in the light sapphire. The component itself will have 5 of the Montes. If you want to make more, you can have more of those as well. In addition to the Montes, which are in SS20, we also have some Minos beads and some mini duos. The mini duo color that I'll be using is the Pastel Bordeaux, and those are used in each component. And then the Minos are the Pastel Bordeaux in the Minos, which is just a tiny little bit darker than the actual Bordeaux in the mini duo. When you're making these, those Minos will also become the chain portion of the necklace at the back of all of the components, which are linked together. At the very back, I'll use a cup button to close off the necklace in the crystal amber color, which highlights nicely the seed beads that I chose to use, which are the crystal amber, which is a Miyuki seed bead that is coated in the Czech Republic, so it matches nicely with the crystal amber buttons. They're the exact same coating. The Firestorm necklace is going to be held together with Wildfire beading thread in 0.006, and I am using my favorite, which is a green color in that cording. You can use a size 10 or a size 12 beading needle to complete this, and it is a 1 needle project. Because I'm using the Wildfire in the needle, I have my thread Zap 2, which I'm going to use to cut the cording off the thread. You may also want to have a needle nose or a bent needle nose pliers handy to make it easier to thread your needle. In Anna's design, she has 2 different styles of components. This is one, or the base style of the component, which will be the drop of the Y, and then we'll make 2 more components this exact same fashion in order to link onto the sides. From there, we'll step into another simpler component and then do our chain necklace to complete the design. Because the bracelet or necklace or earrings, whatever you choose to do, is component based, you're going to want about 5 feet of beading thread on your needle, and you'll be using that and cutting off kind of as you create and join these components. So we will be using the thread burner and making little thread burns at the back of the project. To get started, you'll need little piles of all of your different beads, and we'll make another component that matches this one here, showing you how you will actually add it on, and that way creating the Y, and how you create the original beginner pendant as well. We're going to start our component in the center of the piece. I have it flipped over because we'll actually be adding the Monty at the very end of the component. I don't even have those kind of spilled out yet, and we're going to be connecting it to this first component. To create the component piece, I have my thread on my needle, and the first thing I'm going to do is a stop bead. To do a stop bead, I'm going to pick up a bead that's not part of the design, so that way I don't mix it in with the design. I just have an 11-0 seed bead here, and I'm going to drop it down to the base of my thread, leaving about 2 inches of thread, just enough that I can tie onto. And you can take it through 1 or 2 times through that bead. I usually do twice through, so I know that it's not going to move, especially with a component like this that is circular or a rounded base. To begin the component, I'm going to pick up one of my disc duos, an 11-0 seed bead, and then pick up 3 of your mini duos. Another 11, another disc duo, another 11, 3 more mini duos. Ending then that design, I'll put an 11. So you have your disc duo with your 3 mini duos, and all of those are separated with an 11O seed bead. Bringing that down to the stop bead then, take your needle and thread back through the original disc duo, going away from the stop bead, which is going to bring your design into a circle. So you can see kind of that's that central circle part. To reinforce that circle, go through the seed bead and the 3 mini duos right after the seed bead, and bring your needle out. Give a nice tight yank to make sure that you don't have any extra thread exposed. The thread and needle then will come from the bottom hole of that last mini duo in that set of 3 and go to the top hole. The thread will show a tiny bit on the side of that mini duo, but that's going to be how we step up on the project. From here, we're actually going to link on basically and create the drop portion by going around the circle one more time. In between the mini duos, you're going to pick up a new mini duo and string through the second hole of the next one in line. Adding another mini duo, string through the 3rd mini duo already there in line. That gets you 5 mini duos there at the bottom. On the sides then of the disc duo, we are going to add a Minos bead and an 11O and string through the second hole of the disc duo. I usually hold the project in my hand, kind of bend that stop bead out of the way, and we're going to repeat, adding an 11O and a Minos bead. Just one. Go through the disc, or go through the mini duo on the other side. So you can see we're kind of rounding it out and creating more levels. Adding then 2 more mini duos. You'll put them on between the second hole of the mini duos already there. So we end up with our 5 mini duos on the other side as well. Mirror imaging it, we're going to put a Mino and an 11 on the needle and sew through the second hole of the other disc duo bead. Give a nice tight yank because you want to make sure that the Minos beads sit correctly and that they're not sitting on the side. Add another 11 and another Mino and go through that first hole of the super duo that you put on. And that's going to finish out the sides of the design. This design can then be linked very easily like this in order to do a bracelet. And we're just going to be adding another disc duo. We're going to be adding this and linking it here on the side, creating a Y. I'm going to add the 1 disc duo that's going to sit on the side here. And then we're going to link to the disc duo that's already in place. We'll create another component for this side here, and then go back to a simpler design of the component. The final thing that we'll do in this component is add the Monty in the middle. So here at the top, we want to get to basically the outer edge. To do so, continue your thread and needle through this line of the holes of the mini duos, the first hole of the second row, the second hole of the middle first row, and the first hole of the last one. Just like we stepped up before, we're going to step up from the first hole to the second hole of that mini duo. Here we're going to add our disc duo component. So if this was the first piece, this is exactly how we'd be doing it. Pick up your next disc duo, and sew through the mini duo that's there. That adds the bottom and gets that bottom design in place. From here, if you want to, I'm keeping it simple and just like Anna's design. You can add seed beads around the bottom edge. I added seed beads around the sides, whereas she kept it open. I'm going to add them around the sides and show you how to go back and do that. From here, we need to get from one side to the other side in order to add our disc duo. If you're adding your next disc duo and this is your first component, you're going to continue on in the same fashion, stringing back through the beads and circling around to add the next disc duo. Instead of adding a disc duo at the top, I'm going to be connecting to the disc duo from the previous component that I made off camera. To get to the other side of the piece, after going through the mini duo here and adding in the disc duo, we're going to take the thread and needle, and instead of jumping up, we're going to be going down or towards the center of the project, taking the needle and thread from the outer hole of that mini duo to the inner hole. From there, I'm going to go through the next hole of the mini duo, and what I'm doing is just zigzagging through the project in order to get out the 11 O's towards the middle. I don't want any extra thread exposed as I'm working with it, so that's why we're stringing through and kind of zigzagging through the project. This is going to hide all the thread and you won't see any of it. At this point, I'm ready to add my center before going over and adding my last disc duo. To add the center Monty, you're going to string through an 11-0, so you're coming out next to the disc duo. The Monties, if you're not familiar with them, are two-holed or a crisscross bead. The crystal does have a silver backing and the crisscross in the middle. I'm going to be putting that on, going through one of the holes, doesn't matter which one. From here, you're going to go across your project. If you have the stop bead towards the top there, you can kind of tuck it to the back, or I could flip the component over. I'm going to pull it to the back and get it out of the way. From here, coming out next to the disc duo, you're going to go over to the next corner of the disc duo across from the project. So you're going in a diagonal and coming out the disc duo. So you're sewing into the disc duo on the diagonal and you'll come out the top of the hole. The Monty's going to sit a little bit on top of the disc duo beads. From here, your thread and needle is coming out to the top of the disc duo. You're going to go through the Monty, through the opposite hole, making sure that the Monty is sitting up straight. From here, your thread comes out towards the bottom of the disc duo on the left, and you're going to sew up through that central hole of the disc duo. And that brings the Monty in nice and tight and decorates the middle, which I think the Monty adds a lot to the design. From here, we need to get to the outer edge in order to add our last little component piece. Also, while doing so, if you want to add the seed beads along the edge, like I did here, you can go through the disc duo and out, up along the edge here, adding your component, and then we'll come back and we'll put 5 little beads along the side. To get to the center area, where we add the next of our disc duos, you're going to just sew back just like we've done, so that your thread and needle are coming out through the central hole of the last mini duo. So you can kind of see the trace the thread line that I did. We're going to step up by going and putting our thread on the side of the mini duo and coming out towards the middle. If this was my starter or my first component, I'm going to add my other disc duo bead here and then continue on with my finishing off the design. Because I already have the first component, I'm going to connect it to the disc duo that's already in place. If it's my first component, the disc duo is going to get strung on straight across. As I'm adding the components together, Anna added a 11/0 seed bead strung through the previous component of the disc duo, went along the side of the disc duo, exposing the thread just a tiny little bit, and stepping up, and then adding another 11/0 sitting in the middle there of that other mini duo. So you can see here we did the 11/0, went through the disc duo of the pre-existing component, and added another 11/0 after. What that does is sits it on an angle that it sits at a nice Y. From here, I'm going to finish off this component by going back through these mini duos, giving a nice tight pull, coming out along the project, going along the outer edge through the mini duos and the minos and the 11/0. Here's how I'm going to decorate that 11/0. You can keep it open or decorate it. To decorate the outer edge, you're going to want 5 of the 11s. From those 5 11s, go through the 11 on the other side, and that decorates that outer edge. It just adds a little bit. If you don't want to decorate it, you're just going to string right through that disc duo bead. From here, I'm going to circle through the project, through that, going around that same line. And as I go around that same line, then I'll come out the seed beads on the other side. And as I come out the seed beads on the other side, add in 5 more 11s. After those 5 11s are added, I'm going to simply bring the thread back towards the stop thread or that starter thread, take off the stop bead, and tie the thread ends together. So again, what we're doing is just tracing around the outer edge, which is the same thread edge or the same line as when we added the minos. Making sure your thread doesn't get tangled at all. Coming out the seed bead. Again, 5 beads get added. And that's the only change to the design that I made, is just those 5 seed beads on the outer edge. From here then, we're going to retrace the steps through the design, zigzagging through this mini duo back towards the starter thread. When your thread's coming out right next to that starter bead, go ahead and tie it off and burn down the extra thread. From here we have the first 2 components then to our Y made. I'll make the next component in the same exact fashion that I did this one, and then I'll show you how we're going to go ahead and create the second style of component and add on. When I get ready to start the next piece and the next component, I'll have just enough thread to add that on, complete it, and burn down the threads at the back of the design, just like I'm going to do in a couple seconds as I sew back to this starter thread. I'm at the point in the piece here where I'm getting ready to connect the next component, which was exactly like the one that I just showed. And I'm showing just so you can see the connection point. We're adding an 11/0 in, sewing through the disc duo, back through the disc duo with the needle going in the opposite direction, adding an 11/0 and sewing through the opposite side of the mini duo. So the thread's going exposed in the mini duo, 11/0, through the disc duo, back through the disc duo, 11/0, and through the mini duo. And again, that gets that nice Y creation. If you want to, you can do another component piece the exact same way before joining in on the smaller, which will make it a little bit more substantial and less with the chain. And then we'll go ahead and do the smaller. So from here, what I'm going to do is go back through the project here, finish out decorating with my seed beads on the side of the bead, and then just like the other components, take off the stop bead, tie the 2 thread ends together, and burn them down and get ready to start the next component piece. So it's almost like building blocks that you're constantly adding on to the last piece that you created. So I've gone in and done the second component, and unlike Anna's design where she just had the one component and then went back into the chain with the Minos bead, I decided to do two components just to kind of add a little bit of a variety and kind of variance. This would also look really pretty, just a design idea, to do one of the smaller ones and then back to the bigger component and vice versa. Even maybe putting one of those smaller ones next to the larger component at the base here, doing smaller before bigger ones again. So a little design idea, but I'm keeping pretty much true to Anna's design, just added in an extra little of her component here. So I went ahead and added the two components and finished off the train, which I'll go through for you on this side as well. The smaller components are much easier because you're doing basically one whole less rotation of the disc duo. However, you do need to connect to the project right away before starting the actual component and then just adding in on the second or third row. To start the component, I'm still going to add a stop bead because I am tying off after each component that I make. After adding the stop bead, take your thread and needle through the disc duo. And you want to keep your project facing up so you make sure that your crystals are facing in the correct direction. After that, go ahead and add one of your 11 and 3 mini duos, just like we did before, and an 11. Add a new disc duo, and then repeat, adding 1 11 and 3 mini duos. After that, another 11-0 seed bead goes on. Pushing that all down next to the project, then we're going to round out this design just like we did at the center and the start. Going through the disc duo that my thread originally is coming through next to the stop bead. Giving a nice tight pull will kind of round that out. From here, we're going to add Minos in between the mini duos instead of adding another row of mini duos. To do so, add an 11-0, or go through the 11-0 and the 3 minis. Give a nice tight pull to get rid of any extra thread showing, and step up from the inner hole to the outer hole of that last mini duo. Once you step up through that hole there, the thread is exposed a little bit on the side, and here we're going to add mini duos, or the Minos rather, instead of the mini duos. So you're adding a Minos, which only have one hole, so there's no hole exposed, and going through the mini duo. Add another Minos, and go through the mini duo. Making sure that it's sitting correctly, then you're going to give a little tight pull. To get your thread and needle from one side to the other, step down, going from the outer hole of that mini duo to the inner hole. I'm going to sew then through the inner hole of all 3 of the mini duos. From here then, after coming out the mini duo, go through the 11 and the disc duo. This is my opportunity now to add my Monty in the middle. Pick up the Monty, add on. Just like we did on the previous components, I want you to take your thread and needle and go to the opposite corner of the disc duo across and string through that, which your needle and thread then will be coming out towards that stop bead, and I want you to give that a little pull towards the back. Once you have that coming through, the Monty, you want to force it to lay on top of the disc duos, just the tiniest little bit. Go through the Monty, again in that crisscross fashion, coming out near the stop bead of the disc duo, going to the top of the Monty, or the top of the disc duo on the other side. And again, I kind of put my finger on the Monty to make sure that it doesn't flip. Give a nice tight pull and go through the disc duo. Going through the disc duo then on the opposite side, you're going to give a nice pull. That brings that Monty in, and just spinning the necklace a little bit. Go through the 11 and your mini duos. What this is going to do then is allow you to step up on this side with the mini duos to add in your minos. After coming out the third mini duo, and get that stop bead out of, or the tail out of the way, I'm going to step up and go in to add the minos. The minos here then, just like we did on the opposite side, add the minos, sew through the mini, add the last minos, and sew through the last mini. To finish this piece off then, thread and needle is going to go through the mini duos along the center line, right before, or through the mini duos and through the 11-0 seed bead here, and come out. When it's out there, pull that stop bead back to the back of the project and tie off right there along the back. You're going to repeat then, starting a new component to add a second one in. After the second one is added in, I'll go on with you for how to add on and create the nice chain effect. As I'm coming out the last component piece here, I wanted to show how to keep the thread and needle on in order to do the chain. So what I'm going to do is spin the thread and needle and just let it exposed a little bit on the outside of the disc duo. After coming through and adding my last of the Mino bead, I have the Minos on, and I'm going to go through the mini duos like I've been doing. And rather than tying off or finishing off the thread, if you choose to do this component multiple times, you can step up and continue on without finishing off that thread. Once I'm through the 11-0, I'm going to squeeze through the back of the Monty. That's going to be my fastest way to get towards the top. Coming out the Monty, go through the disc duo, and then you're going to go from the first hole of the disc duo to the second hole of the disc duo, and you could continue with this design. It would also be a great bracelet design as well. Like I said, the cool thing with this design by Anna is that it has a lot of different components that work really well, that you can do just a necklace, you can do a bracelet, you can do earrings, all of that together. In a smart design choice, she used the Minos in the back of the necklace because they almost create a chain-like design. It also allows it to flow on the neck if you have a smaller neck or a longer neck, depending on which length you're doing it. If you do want it to sit a little bit longer, it's going to sit more in a V. Shorter, it's going to sit on your neck more so in the Y shape. To do the actual chain linkage part of the necklace, you are just using the Minos and the 11-0s. Coming out to the disc duo, add on 2 11s, 1 Minos, 2 11s. This is going to be the pattern every single time we add beads. I'm going to circle around so my thread is going into the hole at the top of the disc duo and coming out at the bottom where the thread started. That's going to pull that Minos bead in, and the Minos is going to sit right on top of the disc duo then. Sewing through then, sew through the next 2 of your 11-0s and come out the Minos bead. This is actually kind of a right angle weave stitch. Again, we're adding 2 11s and a Minos and 2 11s. In a circular fashion, you're going to sew through the Minos already there. That's going to circle around and bring the new Minos and the seed beads above. Sew through the first 2 11s so you don't see any extra thread, and then sew through the Minos. This continues for that chain link the entire way, adding in 2 11s, the Minos, 2 11s, circling around through the Minos that the thread is coming out of, and then retrace through the first 2 11s and exit the Minos bead. You're going to continue this chain linkage of the Minos bead for however long you want the necklace to be. I have about 8 inches here because the necklace itself is right about 19 inches on the neck. So I'm going to continue on with the design, adding in the actual chain. And then after that, I'll show you how we're going to do the loop to go inside our button end. Once you make sure that your chain lengths that you created with the Minos beads are the same length, it's time to do your loop for your button. When you're doing the button, what you're going to do is add 3 seed beads instead of 2, then the button, then a mini duo, go back through the mini, back through the cup button, and circle around several times, then retrace your thread lines and tie off. On the side with the loop, we'll do very similar, except all we're going to be doing is making a loop. So you're going to add approximately 28 of your 11-0 seed beads after coming out of one of the Minos bead. And I always say this is a good opportunity to kind of clean up your bead mat if you have beads scattered all over. This is a great place to kind of go along for the fringe edges and pick beads up. After you have your beads on your thread, then we're going to pull them into the loop and then reinforce that loop. If you want to do a regular standard clasp, an elegance clasp, or a clasp garden clasp, or just a lobster, you would do this you would add that at this point as well, using a wire guard or wire protector, then your clasp right after. You may need to use a seed bead first before in order to make sure that the wire guard is not sitting right on top of the Minos. I'm going to take a couple of my beads off since I wasn't counting and my loop got a little bit big. Now go through the Minos bead again, make your loop, make sure that it's going to fit your cup button nice and perfectly, and then reinforce this loop 2 to 3 times. So I have 1 strand of thread going through. I'm going to take another strand through. And if you want, you can do a 3rd piece. Going through then that last Minos bead, I'm just going to go through twice. I'm going to take the thread and needle down through the piece, retracing my thread steps so that way I don't see any of this thread. I'm going to take it down and then tie off the thread. I'm taking it down about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And then to tie off the thread in an easy fashion, you're going to do a sewer's knot. So underneath a bridge thread or a thread that connects one bead to the other bead, make a loop and sew through that loop with your needle once and twice. That's going to make a nice little sewer's knot there on the side. Pull nice and tightly through all that thread. You can see that little knot there. I'm going to sew into the project down a tiny bit more. And once I'm exiting some of my seed beads, I'll take the thread burner, leave about 1/8 of an inch, take the burner, heat up the burner, go into that piece of the 1/8 of an inch and burn it down nice and flush towards the project. You can barely see it. At this point, your Firestorm necklace is completed. And like I said, have fun kind of playing with the components, designing your own version of it, maybe doing a little bit of chain and then go back in to some of these smaller components or the bigger components and really make it your own. This was a really nice piece to make that was very simple to kind of follow along and had some great ideas in it. So I thank Anna for the idea for entering the contest and congratulations on your win. Again, if you need any of the materials to do this Firestorm necklace, you can go back to the beginning of the video where we kind of list them all off. You can also go below the video to the little date stamp that has that show more button that you can click down, or the little eye in the corner. If you want to subscribe, you can also subscribe to this YouTube channel, and that'll get you regular updates on things like the contest winners, design ideas, new projects and new beads that are coming out, as well as kind of what's going on in the beading world. You can also stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and all those good idea places. Also, if you want to, you can join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. There is a great interactive group for ideas, entering the contest, kind of keeping track of what is being designed and who's designing it. It's a lovely group of people that will help answer questions, give ideas, and really provide a great balance of inspiration for you to become a better beader. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have fun creating Anna's Firestorm necklace, and one more shout out to her. Thank you very much for your beautiful design.